Hey everybody, this is Pete, coming to you from Santa Monica, California. You see the pier in the background. I'm making this video as like a companion piece to talk about the album What a Gift that I released recently actually released on July 19, 2022, last week, as to celebrate what would have been my wife, Dafni Amirsakis' 50th birthday, but unfortunately she passed away 6 years ago at the age of 43 from a sudden cardiac arrest she suffered while she was at the gym. Dafni was a singer-songwriter in the Los Angeles Americana roots country folk scene, and she'd released 4 albums, an EP in her lifetime. After she died, we did a tribute album. When I say we, I mean her friends in the Americana music scene in Los Angeles. Many of her friends, not all of her friends, many of her friends covered her song. We put those out on an album called Silhouette. And then a couple of years after that, I released Daphne's final EP that she'd been working on with Jeb Lipson around the time when she died. And that one is called And If We Say Goodbye. But I was thinking last year, around this time last year, I made a video for one of the songs on the Silhouette album. I think it was the Funky Jen's version of Let's Pretend. And after I'd made the video and I started sending it out to people, sharing the link with people, it dawned on me that this year would be Daphne's 50th birthday if she had survived. And I figured that's normal when famous musicians and when composers and things have these major milestone birthdays. Beethoven's 250th birthday or something like that. There's usually some big celebration. I thought I needed to do something to mark what I think would have been a momentous occasion, Daphne's 50th birthday. And I thought I knew I had at least an album's worth of unreleased recordings, demos, scratch tracks, ideas, little instrumental pieces, completed songs, some quite well recorded and multi-tracked. And I figured, this would make a nice collection to release. And when I listened to it, although I really thought the songs were good, and that it would be a good record, I figured that just releasing an album of like unfinished songs, demo recordings, would be probably of interest to Daphne's friends, but wouldn't really extend beyond her friends and her acquaintances and co-workers and colleagues and peers. They would be interested, but the general public probably wouldn't. So I figured it would be nice to maybe take these songs, because they were nicely recorded. We got pretty good at recording, and I mean like getting good microphone placement and stuff like that. A lot of these demos sound really good, and I thought it would sound better if we could just maybe get a rhythm section on there and turn the songs from demos into like real polished recordings and release it like that, and maybe that would be more interesting to the general public. Because I think this record has potential to be listened to by more than just her friends, because it's there's a story associated with it. The 50th birthday of a deceased songwriter who was very much loved but never found any success in her lifetime, and the songs are good, and it's her birthday, and her husband releasing a record. I mean, there's a story to go along with this, and I think people might be interested in hearing the songs. The album itself, I think, is really good, and so that alone, if people should enjoy it just as a record, because I think the songs are good, the performances are good, and it's cleanly recorded, and it sounds very nice. Excuse me for noise. I'm on Ocean Avenue, is it called? And there's also some freeway noise and some wind as well from the ocean, so my apologies if this turns out very noisy. So I started about a year ago. I started collecting what I thought would be maybe an album's worth of material, and eventually I found more and more songs, and I figured that this is going to be, it would need a bit of a decision process to weed out. That doesn't sound too good. To select the best songs and what would make the best album. So yeah, I kept going through like my archives or my Dafni material, and I ended up coming up with, I think, 26 or 27 songs that I thought would be on the shortlist, that I would be happy to release, that I thought were good recordings, that were nice songs, and that would sound good for this project. Ultimately, though, I wanted to get it down to like album length, so maybe 12 songs, something like that. 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Ultimately, I got it down to 14 songs, 45 minutes. Some of the songs, though, I think a couple of the tracks are a minute long, a couple of them are 90 seconds long. So 14 is not, it's not a particularly long album. I think it flows very nicely, and it's 45 minutes of music. I think it's about right. Maybe one song less might have been better, but I think I really like the way the sequence of the songs goes, and I can't really think of a song to take out to make it better. Of these, of the 26, 27 songs, some of them date back from, I think 2002 is probably the oldest song on this collection. When I was going through the archives, I found three songs that Dafni recorded when we did her Red album, that were recorded very nicely, the vocal and guitar and multi-tracked. But those don't appear on the final album. There were songs from all periods, probably around 2007. There were several of them that she'd recorded in like one afternoon. I think that she wanted to send to her band so that they could hear how the songs go for rehearsal. And then there are some probably around 2010 from around the Sweet Time album. I think she wrote a couple, and a few from the later years. She died in 2016, and I think a couple of them are probably recorded around 2015. The songs that made the album, they're not all just from one era, or like the later songs or the earlier songs or mid-period songs. They're kind of from all eras. So I wanted the songs that just sounded good, that would work together as an album. And because I had 26, 27 songs to choose from, it made it that I could pick the songs. Not only could I pick the songs that I thought were the best songs, in fact, I probably didn't pick the songs that were the best songs. I picked the songs that made the best album. So I wanted to have some instrumental pieces, and I wanted to have some, well, clearly like songs. I wanted to have songs that didn't sound similar. So in some cases there were songs that, especially the ones that were a little rougher. Maybe Dafni was just writing those songs, and maybe she reused a lyrical idea from one song in another, and I didn't want it to be any kind of repetition. I wanted it to sound like a one coherent album where everything was intended to be that way, even though these songs were never intended to be on an album, and they definitely were not intended to make a coherent sounding album. And Dafni's recordings were not like her vocals and guitar. They were not intended to be on a record. So there are mistakes, or let's say blemishes. Maybe if this was to actually be an album, if Dafni had intended it to be an album, she would have redone her vocal, or she would have re-recorded the song better, without maybe a bum note on the guitar, or maybe there was some moments where there might be a forgotten lyric, or a hesitation, or a timing issue. These things would have been sorted out if it had been intended to be an actual album. But because it wasn't, we were working with Daphne's demos, scratch tracks, little just ideas. We had to work around some of the technical issues. And so when I was picking the songs that would make the best album, I also had that in mind. Let's pick the songs that are technically better, so that we don't have to do too much work in the studio and editing, and maybe the band doesn't have to play around timing issues or something like that. Ultimately, I chose the 14 songs, and even before we went in the studio, I'd already determined the running order of the songs, the sequence that we were going to have, because that was part of the blessing that I was blessed with the ability not just to say, well, these are the 14 songs, find an order for them. I could actually go through the 27 songs and say, okay, what 14 songs makes it, or what 45 minutes of music makes the best album that flows. I'm a fan of instrumental music. I think I prefer instrumental music to music with words. So I wanted to put some instrumental pieces on there that I really liked. I thought Dafni was always very good with coming up with melodies and interesting tunes. But probably, I don't think there are any instrumentals on any of her other albums. I think that's true. I think there's a percussive jam on her first album, Red, that ends the album. But every other album, they're songs, they're singing. I thought Dafni had some really amazing pieces and ideas for songs that were not songs, instrumental ideas. And I always tried to push her. Why don't you do that? Why don't you do that piece? Or why don't you just have an instrumental in your live set? Or why don't you make an album or EP of instrumental music? I always thought that would be nice. But I could never convince her, unfortunately. But on the tribute album we did, the Silhouette album, there is a piece on there called Popcorn that was an instrumental piece that I really liked, that tune, and I think that turned out really well on the tribute album. Probably that one would have been on this album if we hadn't put it on that one, because I have Daphne's demo for that. But I didn't want to repeat. I wanted this album to be all original new material. So when I was going through the order of the songs before we even went in the studio, I definitely wanted to begin the album with an instrumental piece.